If you hear the term Klaviyo audit, you probably think about the endless hours you spend trying to figure out what's wrong with your Klaviyo account. But if you know where to look first, you can uncover most of the important issues in just 5 minutes. Today, I'll show you my 5-minute Klaviyo audit framework that helps you identify the biggest opportunities without wasting hours digging through your account. Alright guys, we're in our agency demo account, and before we actually start right in, let me tell you, this is probably the most condensed email audit out there. So take it with a grain of salt because it's not a complete audit. We do have videos about that on our channel as well, but this is rather a prioritization framework so that you get the overview and then you know what to double down and where to get specific afterwards. All right, first thing we already want to look out for is the business performance summary card, which is really the holy grail of reporting, because when something is totally off in your account, you will already see it in this card right here, in this small card. I really hope that this card doesn't look the same for you because as I said, this is a demo account. So you can see right here, these are the total conversions, attributed conversions, so attributed revenue. And what you typically want to aim for totally depends on your niche, on your brand, but somewhere between 35 to up to 50% sometimes is what you want to have for the attributed conversions. So this covers both email and text message if you have it set up yet. You just want to take a look at the attributed conversions. Do they look fine? Is everything okay there? Because let me tell you, when you have 20% attributed conversions, so 20% of total, you most likely, if you're not a dropshipping brand or something, you most likely have an issue in your account and you have a lot of potential in your account to sometimes even double your attributed revenue. So let's say your attributed conversions are pretty fine, let's say 45% or something. This is really a common benchmark for a lot of brands. So if that's the case, most likely everything is okay with your account. You will have some minor issues regardless, but overall you don't have any major problems here. If the revenue is a bit lower, the next thing I would personally do is take a look at this attribute conversions card down here, where you can see the conversion rate you have, then the campaigns, flow split, and then also email and text message split. So if you're not sending out text messages yet, of course you will have 0%. Don't worry about that. Later on, if you're sending out text messages, of course, you should have a representable number here as well. The thing I would really look out for in the beginning is the campaign and flow split, because when your attributed conversions are low, most of the time, it's not both of those channels underperforming dramatically, but rather one of those channels is really leaking and you want to focus on the channel that's really doing the worst here. Of course, it doesn't have to say that the other one is doing great, but still you need to focus on something first. So let's say you have 10% or even 5% attributed to campaigns and 90%, or in this case 95% attributed to flows. This is just an uneven split. You won't see a 50-50 split because most of the time, it really depends on the brand, but most of the time the flows are a bit stronger in terms of percentage. So you can expect something between 60 to 75% attributed to flows and the rest to campaigns. But if you have a really uneven split and campaigns is just doing nothing, or maybe flows is doing nothing, you have an area that you can then focus on later on. All right, let's just say we defined the issue to be the campaigns. They are drastically underperforming, and we want to take a look at the campaigns in detail, what isn't working here right now. So as you can see, it looks really blank right here because it's a demo account. We'll just paste in the performance card, how it would usually look like in an account. So you probably know how it looks like. You're probably a bit familiar with it. Basically, you just want to take a look at the open rates, the click rates, all the engaged metrics, all the conversion rates, placed order rates, revenue per recipient. And you just want to take a look at all those four metrics up here. And you want to ask yourself, is it looking good? Is it looking really bad? One thing I would recommend you to not put too many attention to is those little cards under the performance metrics that say poor, fair, good, or excellent. Basically, those cards come together based on a really weird comparison that Klaviyo does, where Klaviyo basically compares your brand to other brands from your niche, but most of the times these brands are not really in your niche. So you could have all those performance cards saying fair or good, and still they're maybe excellent. Don't put too much thought into this, but one point where I would be a bit cautious is when it really says poor. When you see this red sign that says poor, at this point, at least it's not excellent. That's what you know for sure. But it doesn't have to be super bad, but still make sure that you take a look at these metrics in detail then. And to give you some common benchmarks, for example, open rate, it should be at least 30% for the brands I work with. Most of the time we have above 50%. That's really, sometimes it's really uncommon for a lot of brands, but it's doable. But you want to have at least 30 to 40% open rates. Then also click rates, you want to have at least 1 to 2%. So just make sure you spot any obvious underperformers. Also, you want to spot recurring patterns. If you take a look at those campaigns, hopefully you send out campaigns right here. They'll show up down here. You will basically need to look at each campaign in detail. And if you see patterns where you're just not making any sales and other times where just have way higher conversions than usual, you maybe want to double down on the parts where you have really high conversions. Maybe it's different email angles, maybe it's different send times, maybe it's different email lengths, whatever it is. Just assume some patterns, work with these patterns, and try to improve on top of these patterns, basically. All right, for the flows, we're just going to navigate to dashboards and then to the usual overview dashboard. And then we can just scroll down right here. There we have it. Normal flows performance. We also have flows performance detail. We don't want to take a look at that today. But for the flows performance, you can basically select all email flows, or you can select specific flows when you really want to go into detail on one specific flow. Now, to start off with all email flows, basically what you want to take a look at is not the open rate. Yeah, secondary, maybe the click rate, but also don't focus on that. But for flows, what do we want to achieve for flows? Most of the time, it's definitely conversions. We want to get more revenue out of these flows. I don't really know why it says active and site rate right here. It isn't apparent to me, but if your account is set up properly, if you're sending out emails, it should hopefully say placed order rate, because this is really what matters. You want to take a look at the percentages. Again, totally depends on the brand, but you definitely want to have at least 1 to 2% placed order rates, if not more, because when your flows are below that, they're just not high converting. Don't really care about the open rate, don't really care about the click rate. First, focus on the placed order rate, and then you should look at those secondary rates. So when your placed order rate is really, really low, you want to take a look at the other rates. So let's say the open rates across your flows are 30%, which is really not something that you want to have. You want to have at least 40 to 50% for flows. Then you might probably know that people are just not opening your flow emails, and you definitely want to A/B test different subject lines, different preview text, and also maybe take a look at if your deliverability is on point, because people will simply not open your emails when they're going to spam and when they're not getting delivered. So there are a lot of different assumptions you can make based on that. First, take a look at your placed order rate, and then take a look at your click rate. Is it low? Is it high? Is it normal? Then also open rate. And if all those three metrics are fine, you will be fine on the flow side, and it will also look fine in this cart right here, in this attributed card down here. Now, if you do have the assumption that maybe your emails, maybe your flows, your campaigns are not performing that well in terms of engagement rates, but also in terms of conversion rates because of that, when you have the assumption that this is because of your deliverability, you can simply go to analytics down here and then click on deliverability. And if you send out a decent amount of emails, which you should have definitely achieved, your score will show up here. It's basically looks like a pie chart. You basically have a score from 0 to 100, and 100 is of course the best. If your deliverability has some issues, you will be somewhere between probably 50 for some brands and 75 for most brands. And you would definitely want to achieve somewhere between 80 to 100, because this signals good deliverability. Now on the right side right here, you already have an action center. If you have deliverability issues, if you see that maybe the open rate, maybe click rate, bounce rate, unsubscribe rate, spam complaint rate, whatever, if some of these areas is not performing that well, which Klaviyo will tell you down here, you will have an action center here, which I recommend you follow, because these are not the most tailored approaches to fixing the deliverability, but these are some really good next steps that you can take in order to start fixing your deliverability as soon as possible. Now again, if there are any deliverability issues, if there are any problems, Klaviyo will also warn you. They're really big on that. They will show you red signs. They'll tell you performance is poor, they'll give you exclamation marks, they'll give you basically anything you could imagine in any different color. So if there are any problems, Klaviyo will most likely report you what's wrong. Now, if you again go to dashboards and then overview dashboard, you're gonna scroll down a little. Let me take a look. Yeah, this is the email deliverability by domain. And of course, if you send out some emails, you will have different people from different inboxes. So some people might have their email address on Gmail, others on Yahoo, others on MSN, others on live.com. There are many different domains, but basically these domains I just listed are the biggest domains. Most of the time for most brands, Gmail will just be really dominant. It will always be on top of the list. What this card tells you is how well your emails get delivered on certain domains. If, for example, for Gmail, you have 20% open rates, but all the other domains have 45% open rates, this shows that there is a pattern that 45% open rates is the common benchmark. And if Gmail falls below that, for example, Gmail, in terms of open rates or in terms of click rates, in terms of bounce rates, whatever, it will give you a good sign that there might be some deliverability issues, because why would such a small amount of people open your emails on Gmail when all other users and all other domains open your emails way more often? So in this case, your emails might go to spam on Gmail, for example, Gmail. And in that case, if you have deliverability issues on that certain domain, you want to warm up this certain domain during the next few months. Now, next thing you want to take a look at, and I know it's kind of taken a bit more time than I expected just because I'm explaining a lot. But if you follow through this approach, you will be done in less than 5 minutes, because simply you won't talk too much and you'll just go through it, look at all those metrics, and you will already know what to do after your first 2 or 3 audits. So for the pop-up, you just want to take a look at your email pop-up right here. Let's say this is the one that's set live. I hope your submit rate is not 0%. That would be really, really bad. But if your subscribe rate is below 10%, so let's say you're at 4% or something, this is really a huge opportunity to A/B test the shit out of it, because every percent you make in terms of increasing your subscribe rate makes a huge difference. Depending on your brand, depending on your website traffic, it can mean hundreds, if not thousands of subscribers more that you're basically gaining every single month. Now that also leads me to the subscriber growth card. You want to go to the overview dashboard again, and then you want to scroll down where you can, subscriber growth. And you click on view full report. Depending on the date range, you want to, of course, select it. I always like to select the last 30 days because it shows you a better overview. If you would have subscribers, if you would have growth in your account, then you would have a lot of different cards showing up here. And basically what you want to look out for is that, first of all, you're getting a good amount of subscribers, which is highly influenced by your pop-up subscribe rate. But then also what you want to look at is new subscribers versus unsubscribes. You can see it on the right here. You want to have a healthy ratio between those two. So general rule of thumb is to have 3 times the amount of subscribers than you have the amount of unsubscribes in a certain period of time. So let's say you have 1,000 unsubscribes in a certain period of time, then you want to have 3,000 subscribes in that same period, approximately. And of course, on the left, you also want to make sure that your subscribers are growing consistently. So if you're losing subscribers more than you're gaining subscribers, you're really making some mistakes here. This is really causing some issues in your account. Then of course, you might have some period where this happens when you have mass exclusions and you're just cleaning your list dramatically. But overall, normally this shouldn't happen. So the key takeaway of all of that is, don't try to audit every single metric in your account. You won't have the time for it. You won't have the expertise for it. You just want to prioritize what's working, what's not working, and really only take a look at the most important metrics. And then you can find the biggest bottlenecks first, so you can then solve and double down before you move on to anything else. Now, if you want an in-depth Klaviyo audit tutorial that goes a bit more into detail, you can watch this video right here.